Hello, sleepy friends. You can still be my friend even if you're not sleepy. I just like the way that sounds. This is Dawn from GoingBeyondCoping.com, Going Beyond Coping channel on YouTube, and Positively Narcolepsy on Facebook. I'm not a doctor or a mental health professional. I've just had chronic illness for a very long time, and I learned some workarounds for things, and I like to share them. So that's why I do this. I also have a group, if you have narcolepsy, the Positively Narcolepsy group on Facebook. It's a support group that talks about coping techniques and humor and keeping your spirits up, etc. Today's topic is what happens if I don't try to change anyone? And that was a question that I asked myself in my life, and I decided to find out. I ran a lot of experiments, being sleepy and relatively isolated for most of my life. There were a lot of concepts that were just lost on me, and I figure if I can shoot these videos and they resonate with someone, then maybe I can cut their curve a little and they can find their way to going beyond coping into at least sometimes thriving and loving their life. So today I'm going to talk about letting go of the decisions that others make, not being codependent, no longer feeling saddled by the choices others make. I've been building up to this. If you go back in the videos or on the blog, you'll see that there's been a couple of steps before this point. Giving up trying to change others for me started with knowing myself. So I did a video last week about judgment, and I talked about knowing yourself, and I gave a worksheet that you could fill out to help you see what you liked about yourself and what you didn't like about yourself. And once you get to the place where you really, truly, deeply know yourself, the things others say about you just kind of bounce off, because it's like someone coming up to you and saying you're purple. You know you're not purple, so it's easy to say, I'm not purple. And you can replace purple with anything that people are throwing at you. If you know it's not true, then you just bounce it off. You don't accept it. Radical acceptance is completely and totally accepting something from the depths of your soul with your heart and your mind. It's a difficult concept because a lot of people think that you have to be passive. I'm not going to accept that. That's terrible. But you don't have to accept it in the sense of condoning it or saying it's okay. Just understanding it is enough to accept it. Okay, this poopy thing happened. Now what? When you can accept it, then you can move on from there. Last week's video was what happens if I don't accept the judgment of others. And that's what that's all about. It's just not accepting it. It's if it's not true, you don't own it. If it is true, you can decide if there's any truth to it, and you can work on it from there. But once you stop accepting the judgment of others, you judge others less. If you're expecting someone to accept you the way you are, you want to accept people the way they are too, because it's a two-way street. You can accept people where they're at. You want to evaluate them on the whole person. Like, sometimes you'll have a relationship that's 90-10, and 90% of the time it's absolutely awesome, and then 10% of the time it's, why do I see this person? Why do I hang out with this person? Why do I listen to this person? And that's a really small percentage. It may not seem like it, but it really is. So say there's someone that you really dig hanging around with, but they pick their nose or something, you have to decide if that nose picking thing is so much that it you can't handle that relationship with that person. But if everything else about them is great and they also pick their nose, it's way better than if 90% of them sucks and 10% of them is acceptable. I watched a great video years ago that helped me with this. It's The Price of Admission. It was by Dan Savage. And he talked about his own relationship, like the dirty knife on the counter and little things like closing a cabinet door, something like that. He considered that the price of admission. Like, being able to handle those tiny little things gave the great reward of the awesome relationship we got to enjoy with the other person. And that is a great way to weigh things out. If you spend time with someone and when you leave you feel great, but maybe they said something that had you irked for a minute, but on the whole everything was great, that's something you want more of. If you spend an hour with that person, you come away feeling tired or symptomatic or just down, then that's a person that you want to consider replacing in your life if you can. Having a relationship with someone where you're having an if-then relationship. If they would just blank, then you could blank, whatever it is. You know, if they would just stop doing picking their nose. I'm using that as an example because it's the easy one to use a visual for. If they stop picking their nose, then I'll love hanging around with them. But you can't have relationships like that. You either accept the nose picking or you move along. Those are the choices. You can't control another person. You can only control the way you respond to the other person. Sometimes you can cut them out, and sometimes you can't cut them out yet. Like in school, your kid might have a problem with someone in the last semester of middle school. That's like the perfect time if you're going to have problems, because they're going to finish middle school at the end of the semester and go on to a different school where different kids will be. And it's the same way in your life. You may be in a relationship and like me, I was stuck, really. I didn't have we only had one car for my first marriage, and we had 3 kids, and it wasn't doable at that point. So things had to change for me in terms of financial or what have you, plans. I need to make plans to move along from that, and I was able to do that, fortunately. And now that relationship is very different. I am not in a relationship with that person at all anymore. We don't communicate at all. Don't want to go there. Anyway, you can't change people. You just have to accept them where they are and leave them there sometimes. So if you can move away from the relationship, then that's a little bit easier. But sometimes you can't, or you don't want to. I had a very tumultuous relationship with my dad, always, like from the time I was little. And for most of my life, I had a longing that he would change, that he would be more of a dad, and all the things that I perceived as coming with being a good dad. And the problem with that was I pinned it on he knew how to be a good dad and was just choosing not to. And now at 50 years old almost, in March I'll be 50, I know that's just not the case. You only know what you're exposed to. And so if you've never had a good dad and you've never hung around with good dads, you've never seen how a good dad behaves, it's going to be harder for you to understand what it even means to be a good dad, much less what the child wants out of you in being a good dad. And I see this a lot with chronic illness. Parents, they worry a lot about the way that their children perceive them, and they feel their child wants them to change, to be healthier, to spend more time with them, to help them with their homework more, to take them more places. And that's like a reverse thing. So if you accept the child the way that they are and you discuss with them the way that you are, you'll fashion an acceptance from that. There's not as much opposition. I talk very openly with my kids about the way that my symptoms affect me, and I do it unapologetically. I, as Dawn, their mom, don't want to go take a nap. I want to sit here with them and finish watching the show that we're watching, that we plan to watch. But my brain won't let me do that. And by being really forthcoming with my kid and being like, look, this is just the way it is. I want to stay here with you, but I can't. Then that understanding deepens, and my kid has the proper empathy for me, and he understands it's not him. It's nothing to do with him. It's just my health issue that's making it be that way. Then everything can grow from there. It's like an openness, a radical acceptance of this is who I am. And I've done what I can do to make it as good as it can get. And I'm constantly learning and trying new things to find better ways to cope. It's almost 2020, people. You can find anything on the internet now. Not looking for things that might help you would be the biggest mistake. You just always keep looking and listening to things, because you never know what's going to trigger you. I've heard all this stuff. Everything I'm regurgitating back to you, I heard at least 20 years ago, but I didn't get it then. It took the conditions for me to get it. And a lot of that has to do with me being sleepy and isolated, and a lot of it just has to do with me not understanding people. It took me a long time to understand that we're all just meat suit pilots. We're all just out there trying to do the best we can. And that helps you judge people less. And when you judge them less, they judge you less. Sometimes the people in your life that you want to change aren't your people. They come along with other people. So like there's a woman that's always at the gatherings of a friend of mine that I go to, and she has some things about her that I can see how she got those notions, and I can see why she has her opinions. And initially I tried to talk to her because she's older, and I tried to open up her perspective a little bit. But when I saw she had no interest in changing her opinion on anything, I just created that distance. Like, it's still, hi, how you doing? How's the kids? What did you do this summer? Whatever. But I'm not going past that, because I don't want to change her, but she's a 1090 for me. I don't want to spend 90% of my time not agreeing with someone. It's not an ideal way to spend your time. I love the quote, and it's a little odd one. When you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things changes. That sounds like such psychobabble baloney. Just the phrase, the way that it comes out. That's definitely when my husband would roll his eyes at. When you change the way you look at things, the way you look at things changes. But it's true, because I went with my dad looking at him a certain way for most of my life. And then I changed the way I looked at him, and it changed everything. For me, I was able to hear the things he says and not take them in. I was able to have a lot more understanding that he's just a dude who had a really rough go at things and wasn't able to figure out the same things I was able to figure out. And then I'm just grateful. I'm just grateful that I did. I have a little note card, so I didn't want to read from the script because I felt like I really wanted to just talk regular than rather than reading. I found it very distracting. So what happens if I don't read my script? We're finding out right now. You're part of the experiment. Okay. So my husband is a 90-10 guy for sure. And I'm so grateful for the 90% of our relationship that is amazeballs, that the 10% of the time when he's too loud or doesn't want to do something I want to do, or pees on the toilet seat, or whatever silly little things come with cohabitating with someone, those are just the price of admission, and it's so worth it. It really, it could be more, and I'm glad it's not, but yeah. So recently I had been working on not announcing things I noticed in my house that were not the way they were supposed to be, like pee on the toilet seat, or someone left the freezer open. I just wanted to stop stating the obvious because I felt it was creating negative ramifications for me. And I did that. I stopped announcing things, and it got a little bit more peaceful for everyone, not just me. I used to be a real nag. I was married to a man who didn't do the things he said he would do or was supposed to do for a very long time. And so that was my pattern. That's what I was used to. So sometimes now when people don't do the things they're supposed to do, I have a little like PTSD from that in a way. I'm sorry, not to diminish anyone who has PTSD. I totally get it. I've read all about it. I haven't experienced it personally, but I do still have those moments of severe anxiety when exposed to past trauma. So I have it on a small scale. And the relief for not experiencing that once the relationship was over was dramatic. So yeah, definitely helped with the symptoms. So sometimes when you accept people the way they are and you don't try and talk to them about changing or do things like to make them feel like they need to change, then they feel that acceptance and they actually change on their own. And you don't even need to do or say anything to make it happen. So when I experience someone, I try to have a conversation with them to see, you know, where they're at with it, like how clinging are they to that perception that they're having. And then if they're open, then I give them a little bit, like to try and open them up a little bit more. And if they respond to that, I'll give them more. But if they don't, then I'm done, you know. Like, I'm here to feed you a little line, and if you want to grab onto it and hold it and pull, then I'll be there on the other end to help you with that. But if you don't want to hold the line, I'm not going to either, because my time is super valuable. I spend a lot of time doing this stuff, and the reason is because of all the emails and the comments and the Facebook messages that I get from people saying how much it helped them, how much of a difference it made. I can't tell you that if I had watched one of my videos 5 years ago that I'd be further along now, but I feel like I would have. I feel like I grow every time I do one, especially as people, you know, respond to them. I feel like it solidifies the learning of the lesson, because nobody knows what they're doing. We're all just winging it. So what happens if I don't try and change others? You find more understanding for other people and their plight. No matter how bad your plight is, you can see the weaknesses for them. You can see how hard they're trying. You can see that even though their struggle isn't the same as yours, they still consider it a struggle. You have acceptance. You accept people where they're at. Somebody's having a bad day or a bad week or a bad life. You accept them. And that doesn't mean you have to stay in their periphery. You can excuse yourself, but let them be who they are. I love that Judith Orloff quote, "Everyone deserves the dignity of walking their own path." And you can light the path. You can put some nice breezes on the path, but everybody's got to do their own walking. Non-judgment, non-codependence, not enabling other people's bad behavior by sticking around when they refuse to change. Non-opposition, where you're not opposing people. People come to you with their stuff, or you see something that they could or should change. You don't oppose that. You just let everything go through and see what happens, and then you respond from there. You don't have to be a doormat. I'm not saying be a doormat. I'm saying just choose the way you respond. You don't have to be angry if people come to you with something that would leave you feeling like a doormat. You just need to acknowledge, hey, if I do that, I'll feel like a doormat. No. No is such a magic word. And that no is something that I had to practice. I know it sounds crazy. I learned about boundaries over 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, when I was in couples therapy. And I even remember saying, you mean I can say no? And they said, yes, I can say no. So I knew that. But until all this years later, when I actually applied it, when I actually said no to something that I had before felt obligated to do, that's when I saw things start to change, was when I practiced. I don't know. Maybe you guys have an easier time piloting your meat suit, but I had some trouble. And yeah. Okay, ultimately, all of those things lead you to peace. I've had some really horrible things happen to me in my life. I could tell you stories that would make you cry very easily, and like they were nothing, because I've gotten to the place in my life where I just accept that that's what happened. I can't go back and change anything that's happened. All I can do is work on being a good person and making good decisions and encouraging other people to do the same thing. That's my purpose. I figured out how I can keep going beyond coping into thriving and loving my life, despite the fact that I have 9 disabling disorders. I have tons of symptoms all day, all night. And I'm so happy. Like, I can't even begin to tell you. My car was stolen recently, financial problems, all kinds of things come and go, and none of it takes my core happy. And you can get there. All you have to do is figure out your own meat suit. Like, what does your meat suit want? And give it to it. Learn, listen, meet people. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. I got to go to work. Make it a great day. Please like the video. It'll help more people see it. And again, if you made it this far, go ahead and type, I made it, so that I know. There weren't many last time, so I'm wondering if anyone ever gets to the end of my videos. I guess we'll find out. Make it a great day, people. The choice is always yours.